128 local trainers trained, so a real asset to this area. And this figure here, this 97% retention rate, 97% of participants completed their course. Each of the modules was 5 days. So these participants were not incentivized to be there, and they had to have a good reason to come back on the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. And I hope that the training you've experienced this week has helped to show you why that is. They clearly enjoyed it and found it relevant to their needs. And similarly, over 95% of respondents commenting on every session felt that they were satisfied or highly satisfied with the content and the delivery of those. And then finally, 78% of participants in aggregate of those sampled, so that's 4 out of every 5 people who attended the training, reported that their monthly income had increased. So 4 out of 5 of those participants felt that their monthly income had increased following this training. And that really is an unusual result. And we really feel proud. I think that's a great credit to the trainers and to the communities and us. The participants and trainers can be proud of. The next slide, please. So as the Skills for Prosperity programme comes towards its close, we are looking at what will be left and how can this be built on by government and other stakeholders. So one of the outcomes of the programme is that a D4 study programme in global tourism management has been established in Polimonado, as a result building on and strengthening this community relationship. Another is that partnerships have been established between Polimonado, UNCLAD and University of Gloucestershire, which have already produced a number of research publications. There has been some private sector investment. So when you go to Budo later, you will see that following the project developments, private sector has been attracted to share CSR funding. And now this week, our business model and training methodology has now been shared with Kemenparikraf, and the trainers were all here today from the super priority tourism destinations. And this is really special. This is most exciting of all, because this means that the message can be taken to other parts of Indonesia. We will hear from colleagues shortly a little bit more about the Sister Village programme. And also colleagues here today, so Eric Rode coming from Bangkok, has been in the region to look at how we can build on this programme and use the growth, the momentum, the strong relationships and collaborations to support further development projects in the area. So that we're looking forward to hearing more about that later as well. So this really is all I wanted to say by means of an introduction, and I hope that the work delivered under the Skills for Prosperity programme inspires a sense of the potential for the innovation pillar of the Blue Agenda context, by bringing together academic collaboration, environmental awareness, economic growth, and improvement in the skill sets and livelihoods of coastal communities. So now we will look forward to hearing from our other distinguished guests and to a discussion on how we can further collaborate to this agenda for a sustainable and advanced maritime economy in Indonesia 2045, where no one is left behind. Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih Ibu Merry Chan atas paparannya dan introduction-nya untuk sesi sharing pada pagi hari ini. Dan untuk sesi sharing pagi hari ini akan saya langsung undang moderator kita, Bapak Irfan Afandi, selaku National Project Officer UKI Law Skills for Prosperity Indonesia. Dipersilakan Pak Irfan. Boleh tepuk tangan untuk Pak Irfan? Waktu dan tempat dipersilakan.
Terima kasih. Terima kasih. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sehat dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semuanya. Seperti yang kita sampaikan dalam undangan ya, bahwa tujuan sharing pengetahuan pertemuan pada hari ini tujuannya adalah berbagi pengalaman, pengetahuan, mungkin praktek-praktek baik yang bisa di-share kepada kita dalam rangka kontribusi teman-teman dalam pembangunan ekonomi, dalam agenda nasional pembangunan ekonomi biru. Nah, perlu diketahui bahwa pada hari ini, perkenalkan semua peserta, saya akan sedikit bacakan. Ada perwakilan dari teman-teman Bappenas, kemudian dari kementerian terkait, kemudian dari pemerintah daerah, dari Provinsi Sulawesi Utara, teman-teman dari Bapeda, kantor dinas pariwisata, kemudian kantor dinas terkait dari tenaga kerja, PUPR, lingkungan hidup, dan Kementerian Pemberdayaan Desa. Kemudian ada juga dari pelaku pariwisata, dari Asita, Asidewi juga kita undang. Kemudian dari teman-teman akademisi Politeknik Negeri Manado, ada teman dari Universitas Kelabat. Kemudian ada juga kemarin kita undang dari Samratulangi. Aktivis NGO yang sangat concern pada isu lingkungan dari Bajiraru. Kemudian kemarin kita juga undang dari mining company. Mereka banyak sekali terlibat dalam pembangunan ekonomi kelautan juga, pemberdayaan masyarakat. Kemudian ada beberapa narasumber dari Seko yang sudah tadi dikenalkan, ada juga dari Erik dari Asia Pasifik. Yang kemarin sudah mengikuti pengenalan modul ILO, ada dari DSB Toba, Borobudur, Jogja, kemudian ada DSB Lombok, Labuan Bajo, Wakatobi. Jadi lengkap. Mudah-mudahan hari ini kita diskusi setelah kita mendengarkan pemaparan dari Ibu Merry terkait dengan apa kegiatan pariwisata pesisir yang dilaksanakan di Manado. Kemudian kita akan mendengarkan pemaparan apa sih Blue Economy Agenda itu, yang nantinya akan disampaikan oleh Ibu ini untuk bisa memandu proses diskusi kita, sehingga diskusi kita itu tidak melebar kemana-mana, fokus pada kontribusi kita kepada agenda nasional ekonomi biru. Nah, kemudian akan dilanjutkan beberapa proyek yang nantinya akan dilaksanakan juga dari teman ILO di Asia Pasifik. Kemudian teman dari Seko juga akan menyampaikan kegiatan-kegiatan yang terkait dengan pembangunan pariwisata. Ada juga dari World Bank, dari teman kementerian terkait pembangunan pariwisata desa. Nah, setelah nanti ada pemaparan dari masing-masing narasumber, kita akan undang dari peserta yang lain untuk bisa memberikan input atau mungkin pertanyaan atau saran-saran atau mungkin juga di daerah yang sudah dilakukan dalam rangka kita memberikan masukan untuk pemerintah nasional. Diharapkan proses diskusi nanti ini akan berakhir jam 11.30 karena teman-teman yang muslim harus melakukan sholat Jumat. Jadi pada saat 11.30 harapannya kita nanti sholat Jumat. Yang tidak sholat mungkin langsung bisa lunch. Dan harapannya nanti jam 2 kurang 15 menit semua peserta akan berkumpul di bawah dan kita akan berangkat bersama-sama ke Desa Biru. Kira-kira seperti itu pengaturan dari hari ini. Mudah-mudahan kita bisa mencapai apa yang kita inginkan tepat waktu. Dan untuk selanjutnya kita akan mengundang Ibu Amalia Adining Gar Widyasanti, biasa dipanggil Ibu Winnie, untuk bisa memberikan pemaparan apa itu tentang Blue Economy Agenda. Beliau ini saat ini posisinya sebagai Deputi Menteri Bappenas untuk bidang ekonomi, tapi karirnya cukup panjang, pernah jadi senior advisor dari Bappenas untuk perencanaan pembangunan ekonomi, pernah juga sebagai Head of SDG Nasional. Kemudian pendidikan terakhir beliau adalah PhD di Ekonomi dari University of Melbourne. Jadi untuk selanjutnya Ibu Winnie kami persilakan untuk bisa memberikan pemaparan tentang Blue Economy. Agenda Ibu Winnie bergabung secara online. Silakan Ibu Winnie.
Atas undangannya yang telah diberikan. Mohon izin, apakah suara saya terdengar ya Pak?
Bisa Ibu, bisa.
Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu semua. Mohon izin, apakah ini dalam bahasa Inggris atau Indonesia Pak?
Indonesia atau Inggris ada interpreternya Ibu, simultan, sehingga Ibu langsung saja kita menggunakan alat untuk interpreternya.
Terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu. Pertama-tama saya ucapkan selamat pagi dan juga terima kasih kepada ILO yang sudah berinisiatif untuk melaksanakan acara ini. Pada kesempatan pada kali ini, saya akan menyampaikan bagaimana agenda dari pengembangan Blue Economy di Indonesia yang ini menjadi salah satu prioritas pembangunan nasional di bidang ekonomi saat ini. Karena Blue Economy akan menjadi salah satu potensial besar buat Indonesia dalam pengembangan dan untuk meningkatkan pertumbuhan ekonomi yang inklusif dan berkelanjutan ke depan. Tentunya pasca COVID dan masa kita mencapai mencapai pertumbuhan ekonomi yang tinggi dalam waktu ke depan, Blue Economy salah satu potensial yang bisa kita dorong bersama, karena Indonesia di tahun 2045 bercita-cita untuk keluar dari middle income trap. Nah, untuk kita bisa keluar dari middle income trap, kita harus mengejar pertumbuhan ekonomi persen rata-rata dari tahun ini sampai dengan tahun 2045 secara rata-rata. Nah, oleh sebab itu, Bappenas sedang menyusun transformasi ekonomi Indonesia dengan 6 strategi besar sebagai game changer untuk mencapai pertumbuhan ekonomi tinggi yang inklusif dan berkelanjutan. Nah, di dalam 6 strategi besar untuk dan Blue Economy menjadi salah satu bagian dari strategi 2, yaitu meningkatkan produktivitas sektor ekonomi. Mengapa Blue Economy? Pertama adalah karena Indonesia sebagai negara kepulauan mempunyai modal besar, karena sebagian besar dari luasan kawasan Indonesia ini merupakan wilayah laut yang sebesar 65% dari total luasan Indonesia berupa laut. Sementara itu kita terdiri dari 17.500 pulau dengan panjang pantai sebesar 80.700 km, dan juga kita punya deklarasi Juanda atau yang disebut dengan Juanda Declaration, di mana kita memiliki exclusive economic zone, di mana within atau dalam area exclusive economic zone ini Indonesia punya kekuatan atau otoritas untuk manage dan merevitalisasi seluruh potensial laut di dalamnya. Selanjutnya adalah potensi dari Blue Economy di Indonesia ini dari segi ekonomi, lingkungan maupun sosial. Dan saat ini kita punya target bahwa 30% dari laut adalah akan menjadi kawasan marine protected area. Blue Economy mengapa sangat penting buat ekonomi Indonesia? Saja kita bisa mendapatkan sumber pertumbuhan ekonomi baru, karena kita bisa menciptakan nilai tambah yang besar dari potensi laut kita. Tetapi juga blue economy ini merupakan salah satu cara kita dan alat kita untuk mencapai Sustainable Development Goals. Sekarang dari 17 goal SDGs itu ada sekitar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 goal dari SDGs yang bisa kita capai dengan kita menerapkan blue economy. Oleh sebab itu, blue economy ini akan menjadi strategi penting buat Indonesia untuk kita bertransformasi pasca COVID-19. Untuk mendorong blue economy ini kita perlu kolaborasi yang erat karena sekali lagi saya ingin sampaikan bahwa blue economy ini bukanlah sektor kelautan dan perikanan ataupun sektor kelautan saja. Tetapi blue economy ini sifatnya lintas sektor. Ada sektor perikanan, ada tourism, ada shipping industry, ada juga mengenai bioteknologi, ada juga yang terkait dengan marine mining industry, dan juga mengenai environmental seperti ocean waste, kita bicara mengenai coastal erosion, dan juga environmental degradation. Tetapi kita tentunya selain tantangan yang kita lihat, tapi kita punya peluang besar. Indonesia adalah salah satu negara kepulauan terbesar di dunia, sehingga apabila kita bisa memanfaatkan potensi ekonomi biru ini akan menjadi kontribusi yang signifikan terhadap perekonomian Indonesia. Oleh sebab itu Bapak dan Ibu, Indonesia sudah memiliki beberapa policy instrumen dan juga yang ingin saya sampaikan bahwa Indonesia di tahun 2021 telah menyusun Blue Economic Development Framework for Indonesian Economic Transformation yang kami bekerja sama dengan OECD. Ini sudah kami publikasi dan tersedia secara online. Kemudian saat ini kami sedang menyusun peta jalan ekonomi biru, dan tahun lalu pada saat G20 tentunya Kemenko Marves sudah meluncur NBAAP, National Blue Agenda Action Partnership, dan tentunya saat ini kita Bappenas dari Blue Economy Development Framework akan kami lanjuti menjadi Blue Economy Roadmap for Indonesia yang juga dibantu oleh UN Agency, Rice Plus Indonesia, Redis, dan Ekonusa. Nah, saya ingin menggarisbawahi bahwa blue economy ini terdiri dari bukan saja sektor tradisional seperti fishery, tourism, and manufacturing related to ocean, tetapi juga dari sektor seperti kita bisa mendorong pengembangan renewable energy dari laut, R&D and education, bioekonomi, bioteknologi, dan juga resource management. Yang penting, prinsip dari blue economy ini adalah to uplift the value chain that we can create from the ocean. Jadi pada saat kita bicara blue economy adalah bagaimana kita bisa menciptakan nilai tambah untuk bisa mendorong pertumbuhan ekonomi yang lebih inklusif dan berkelanjutan. Di dalam Blue Economy Roadmap, ini draft yang sebentar lagi akan kami luncurkan di bulan Juli. Tadi dari 4 pilar. Pilar pertama adalah promoting sustainable economic growth. Pilar kedua adalah securing healthy, resilient, and productive oceans. Pilar yang ketiga adalah human health, well-being, and shared prosperity. Dan pilar yang keempat adalah creating enabling environment, termasuk blue financing di dalamnya. Selanjutnya saya juga ingin menyampaikan bahwa dalam rangka kita menyusun peta jalan ekonomi biru, kita juga menyusun the Indonesian Blue Economy Index. Ini merupakan alat yang nanti kita bisa gunakan bersama untuk melakukan monitoring dan evaluasi. Dan the Indonesian Blue Economy Index ini kami disagregasi berdasarkan provinsi. Jadi kita punya Blue Economy Index untuk seluruh provinsi Indonesia dengan 3 pilar demikian. Dan salah satu terakhir yang ingin saya sampaikan adalah mengenai bagaimana kita saat ini di dalam keketuaan ASEAN, kami juga sedang mengambil inisiatif di tahun ini untuk menyusun ASEAN Blue Economy Framework. Artinya Indonesia akan take leadership di tingkat ASEAN untuk kemudian mengoptimalkan pemanfaatan ekonomi biru di ASEAN. Tetapi sebelum kita masuk pada proyek-proyek, tentunya kita akan menyusun kesepakatan dokumen yang terkait dengan yang kita sebut dengan ASEAN Blue Economy Framework. Insya Allah bahwa bulan September kami akan meluncurkan dokumen ASEAN Blue Economy Framework, dan di bulan Juli kami akan menyelenggarakan ASEAN Blue Economy Forum. Demikian, tentunya mudah-mudahan Blue Economy bisa kita garap bersama. Kita perlu kolaborasi dari berbagai stakeholder untuk mendorong dan merealisasikan pengembangan ekonomi biru menjadi bagian yang tidak terpisahkan dari transformasi ekonomi Indonesia. Demikian, terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Bu Winnie, kita berikan tepuk tangan untuk Bu Winnie. Saya dikontak, katanya Bu Winnie harus mendampingi Bapak Menteri, tapi saya berharap sekali Bu, ada staf Ibu nanti yang terus bisa mengikuti, karena barangkali ada proses tanya jawab yang perlu ditanggapi atau direspon oleh Pak Benar. Terima kasih Bu Winnie. Untuk selanjutnya,
Sama-sama,
ya terima kasih Bu. Dan untuk selanjutnya kita akan mendengarkan pemaparan tentang proyek dari teman kami yang di regional office di Bangkok, Bapak Eric Ruder, yang akan menyampaikan tentang ASEAN Just Transition, ya, bagaimana proyek ini bisa berkontribusi terhadap Blue Economy Agenda. Silakan Bapak Eric Ruder untuk bisa menyampaikan pemaparan.
I can actually be very loud, but I use the mic and it's not. Play with that one. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. It's actually, I'm very, very fortunate to be here in North Sulawesi. I flew in this past weekend. I have to say that the flight, you take the Garuda Indonesia right before lunchtime. You get into Manado about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. People wonder on the flight, they just pull the little slide down and they either go to sleep or they play with their phone or whatever. But I'm going, leaning over, looking out the window because the scenery is just incredible as you're coming into Sulawesi. Islands, you can see the reefs, you see the mountains, and then the way the clouds grow. It's really a beautiful corner of the world. So, like I said, I'm very fortunate to be here. Thank you for the introduction from Ilfan. I'm coming from the regional office in Bangkok, but I'm actually from Hawaii, so I know a lot about the impacts of tourism, mass tourism, sustainable, what we call sustainable tourism, if there is such a thing, all these types of things. And so, doing a scoping mission this week that Mary and her team have done here, and Irfan. So we visited the highlands, we visited the coastal areas. I didn't get a chance to go diving, but I really love to see, be under the water in Bunaken, because I used to surf before I was in the wheelchair. So I love being on the ocean. So before we dive into the tourism aspect of this, I want to give you a little bit of a background on what I'm doing with the ILO, and it's basically on green jobs and just transition. So I try to look at green jobs and just transition in the context of green blue economy in North Sulawesi. So if we can put up the slide. There it is. Okay, thank you so much. So, okay, I'm going to keep my glasses. I can't see that now, so I have to look at my screen here. So, let's go immediately to the next slide. So to give you a little bit of background, okay, why green jobs came about. So this was a response by the UN Secretary General back in 2019. It seems like yesterday because COVID wiped out my memory for like 3 years, so I simply jumped back to 2019 all the time. But it's the Climate Action for Job initiative is what kicked off the concept of moving green jobs forward within the ILO. So, and the reason why green jobs has picked up momentum is because we need to transition to a carbon neutral and climate resilient economy. And climate resilience is part of the reason that when we look at green and blue economy, we have to also look at the resilience. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Next one. There it is. Okay, that's probably familiar to a lot of people here in the room today. That's actually, I have really good photos, but they're all on my phone. I didn't have time to transfer them to my computer. So this is actually, I just pulled it off the Google, but this is a Bunakin. So it's, as you can see, it's just incredibly beautiful. And so what is a green job according to the ILO? I'll give you the official ILO green job definition. So it's a decent job, and what is a decent job? That means you have access to social protection. You're moving away from informality to formality, and you contribute to preserve or restore the environment, be that in traditional sectors such as manufacturing, mining, construction, or to emerging green, what we call green sectors. Now, what we can debate what exactly a green sector is, but looking at places like renewable energy, EVs, and doing improvements in energy efficiency. So let's move on to the next slide. And this is where, because I'm being sent all over the place. ILO sends me all over the Asia Pacific region, and people are like, well, I still don't understand what is a green job exactly. So for me, I try to boil it down a little bit. So if you're working in a particular sector, say you're in a coal mine, and you want to move away from that particular type of dirt, and this is what's happening in Indonesia right now, where the country's been given $15 billion to phase down or phase out coal. So that's moving away from the dirty sector, but you have to phase in what? So one of the areas, you have to improve your energy mix. So phasing in would be obviously renewables, but also looking at biomass, hydropower, and so forth. But when you move away from something that's a dirty industry or sector, there's also moving away from a dirty process, or in particular for the ILO, we always talk about the garment sector. So when you're dyeing clothes, there's a lot of chemicals involved, and those chemicals are toxic to the people who handle them, and they're toxic to the environment. But there's ways of dyeing clothes using CO2 and being very green. So when you move away from this particular dirty or polluting process to a cleaner process, there's also the co-benefit of improved occupational safety and health, because you're no longer being exposed to these very bad chemicals, and these chemicals are not going into the environment. So that's just a kind of a boiled down version of what green jobs are. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, and this is, well, what is a just transition? Just, you hear just a lot, Nike uses just, but just do it. And so a lot of people thought I was talking about, we just do a transition. It's like, no, we're not just doing a transition. It's a justice transition to ensure that no one is left behind as we transition from industries that we're phasing out, such as the coal-fired power plants and coal mining, and phasing in. We want to make sure that the workers are not left behind. So a just transition, according to the ILO, is a process and a goal to undertake climate change actions that equally advance job creation, social justice, and fair transitions for workers. And so I know we have someone here from the World Bank, so I have to beat on them a little bit, because the World Bank, we have discussions with them about coal phase down, but they don't include social justice or social dialogue in their definition of just transition. And why is it so important that we have to have the workers' voice or the social dialogue, because we can end up with a situation. I always use Sri Lanka because it's in the agricultural sector in Sri Lanka. The government decided to tell the farmers to move away from more industrial-based monocropped agriculture to organic agriculture. But they did this without discussing first with the farmers, the people that have to do the transition. And so what happened is this basically was supposed to be done overnight, and the whole system, the agricultural system, collapsed in Sri Lanka. And if you're aware of what's happening in Sri Lanka at the moment, the economy is teetering. So this is why social justice is so important. It's not just because the ILO thinks it's cool to do it. No, it's a key component of what we do here to ensure that people have a voice, they have a future, they have access to a decent job and so forth. So also, it's a shared goal, but different pathways. Each country has different pathways for, picking up a just transition. And for example, Indonesia has the 6 grand strategies guide for economic transformation towards a green economy. So let's move on to the next slide. So I'm not going to touch on all this because when we look at the opportunities part of it, are we really creating 100 million new jobs? Well, I don't really know where these numbers come from, so I'm not going to touch that. But I will say that the challenges are that jobs depend on services provided by the environment, and a good example would be just here in North Sulawesi, in the tourism sector, in the resort sector, and in the diving sector. So if you allow runoff from sewage treatment, or you allow plastics to pour into the ocean and wash up on the beaches, you're degrading why people come here as tourists. So this is why it's so important to the environment is providing the service here. We need to protect that. And then looking across, and this is across all sectors. It's not just the tourism sector. We're looking at agriculture. There's greener ways to grow our food, because if you look at industrial agriculture, for example, it's input intensive. It's herbicides, pesticides, and these things are petrochemical based. So yeah, you can increase your yield, but the data is in that the more you use these inputs, you will plateau and you'll start to decline. So there's better ways of growing your food. There's better ways to manage your fisheries. I know everyone thinks fish farms are okay, but a lot of these inputs that go into fish farms are leaching out into the natural fisheries, and this is disrupting the natural fishery system. And forests are so important because they are the watersheds. You cut down your forests, and then you have erosion and landslides coming down the hills. In places like Lao PDR, the World Bank decided to build have a dam project, and one of the aspects of the dam project was to preserve the watershed behind the dam. But unfortunately, after the dam was built, all the forest was cut down due to illegal logging. All the sediment flowed into the reservoir and blocked the intakes to generate electricity, and the whole dam failed. So this is why we have to live with the environment, because it sustains us. We shouldn't look at it any other way than that. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so Sulawesi, building a green and blue ecosystem in North Sulawesi. It's basically not cutting the branch in which we sit on, which is things we need to think about. And so part of the scoping mission this week has been really interesting. We met with some of the resorts. I don't know if some of the resorts are here in the room. We went to Grand Lule, we went to Paradise, don't remember if it has a long name, but these are really super beautiful resorts. And the key to really sustaining these resorts is also having them linked to the local community, because that's the value added. When tourists come, they want to learn more about the culture and the local communities, the local foods that are out there, and learn more about what's happening. And so the resorts have to be part of the ecosystem and the local community. And the resorts also are linked to the highlands. Because what's being produced in the highlands, I learned yesterday there's an organic co-op of 30 farmers here, and they're growing organic food. And this food should be part of the meal plan at the resorts and part of the ecosystem. So it's so important to have community participation, not just on along the coast, but up in the mountains as well. And then there'll be chances for people who are staying at the coastal resorts, for them to also stay in the highlands as well. So the diversity here in North Manado is amazing. So, and then sectoral engagement. Yesterday we also visited a mining company, MSM mining company. I think the GM is sitting right next to me, but I bring them up because everyone thinks a mine is something that's quite negative to the environment, but it's not if it's managed correctly. And this particular mine provides jobs for the local community. It looks after the environment, and then because we're moving towards a green economy, quote unquote, we're moving toward a more mineral-intensive economy, which means that more and more minerals are going to be extracted for our electric vehicles, for our cell phones, and so forth. So copper, for example, will have to double in its extraction in the next 5 years, but it'll have to triple in its recycling. So we simply do not have enough of these mineral resources. We have to recycle them, and this is what's pushing us towards a circular economy. So let's move on to the next slide. So looking at the environment itself, moving towards a climate resilient green and blue ecosystem. So when we talk about forests and watersheds, as I mentioned already, these are the the natural infrastructure that is needed to help sustain the activities in terms of sustainable tourism, because it's the forests to protect us from landslides and don't allow sediment to run into the seas, and provide the water for the watershed for us to have our water. So that I know a lot of companies here, for example, use water catchment, but water is such an important ingredient for our lives, for the communities. And then mangroves and reefs. Okay, why are mangroves and reefs so important? I talked to BMKG. I worked with BMKG before on the tsunami project with the private sector. Mangroves are the first line of protection against storm surge, against tsunami, and Indonesia doesn't need to be told about tsunamis. The last one I believe was 2018. And these are natural protection along with the reefs. These are beautiful sites to see, but they also provide the natural protection. And so I call them natural sustainable infrastructure. And so on to the next slide, looking at tourism, some of the things that you see probably in Bali. I've never been to Bali, but I live in Thailand, so I've been to Phuket. And so as tourism increases, unfortunately the environment becomes more and more degraded. PB Lay, PB Dan, these are big, these aren't photos here, but if you know anything about Thailand, PB Lay are these karst islands that stick straight up out of the ocean, very beautiful. And this is where they filmed the movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. It became a tourist, a mass tourism site. Boats were coming in, up to 2,000-3,000 people a day, pouring in, walking over the reef, dumping trash everywhere. It finally took the Thai government a couple of years to realize, hey, there's nothing left of this place. It's turned into a giant garbage dump. It took many containers to take the trash out. The government had to shut down PB Lay for over 2 years. It's now open again, but it's still degraded. The reefs have not recovered. So these are things that we have to take into mind. And also plastic waste, which just seems to be everywhere. we send these diving bells to the deepest trenches in the Pacific Ocean. We're seeing garbage at the very bottom. So these pictures here, I believe the surfer there, he's surfing through all the trash in Bali. And then, of course, fishing nets, we need to look at how we fish. We cannot just cut the lines and let the drift nets go to the bottom of the sea. These affect our sea creatures that could be at the same par as us, because dolphins have bigger brains than we do, and orcas, all these types of creatures are out in the ocean, and we're not doing them any favor, because every time a pilot whale washes up in the Gulf of Thailand, they cut it open, it's stuffed full of plastic bags, because pilot whales actually like to eat jellyfish, and they can't make the differentiation between the two. So, coming to sustainable tourism, so is there such a thing? I don't know, but I mean, we're here because I benefited as a young person when I was going to the University of Hawaii. I worked at a hotel. I made my money parking cars and being a chauffeur, for example. So tourism did provide me a livelihood to put me through school. So I'm not going to bash tourism. But we need to think about how to manage tourism. So it always hurts me actually to see this Air Asia commercials. They always say, now anyone can fly. And I'm like, I don't know if I want everyone to be flying, you know, it's just kind of scary. Realizing the kind of things I've seen in Phuket, for example, and there's a photo here of they have these full moon parties which completely trash the beach and leave a huge mess. People handling sea turtles and slamming them down on the beach, all these types of things. So, you know, these are things that we have to look at because Manado is a really special, beautiful place. It's, in my view, much more beautiful than Hawaii. There's nowhere in Thailand that can touch it. It's an amazing place. So, how to protect that. So there's small things, and we will look at bigger things. But I was just thinking, as I flew in, and then you arrive, you do your visa on arrival at CGK, right? That part's easy. You just pay your money, you get your visa. But right before you enter the country, you have to do this e-customs check. And so it's a form that you fill out online. I was thinking, gosh, even a little something like that, if it could be directed towards tourists, where they have to fill out something, so we at least plant something in their brains before they come here, and just get a little bit of advocacy before people arrive, before they start walking on the reef, before they start throwing trash on the ground, smoking a cigarette, flicking it anywhere they want. How can we how can we improve tourist education? So this is something that we need to build into our projects as we move forward, because this is where Manado is going to go. It's going to increase, wants to increase tourism, and it should. I visited this Paradise resort yesterday. It's beautiful. It was built by Suharto's son back in 1992. It sits on this prominent, it's got a golf course, but in the front has this beautiful view of the beach, and it's incredible. Okay, so I got 3 more minutes, and then I have to shut up. So, but you know, there was nobody, zero people at this hotel. Okay, nobody. Even the Grand Boulay, which is beautiful, they make most of the money actually from the diving, but they were at 41% occupancy. And then we visited the homestays, and I always get the Pulisan and Marislav. So there's these beautiful homestays all set up. But I was thinking to myself, if I'm going to stay at these places, I don't know anything about them. I couldn't find it on the internet. So we have to make some connections. We have to, and I think the homestays are really, really valuable, because people coming from elsewhere will actually learn something about the community if they stay in a homestay. So how we can improve access for tourists, increase their education, and improve the local economy for not just the villagers in these villages, but also some of the bigger resorts that are also bringing in people. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you so much for your attention, and of course look forward to hearing your views as well. Thank you so much.
On behalf of one mic. Terima kasih Pak Erik untuk pemaparan tentang just transisi terkait dengan pembangunan pariwisata di Sulawesi Utara. Jadi kalau bicara tentang Manado nggak akan habis, nanti panjang sekali karena memang cukup indah di Manado. Dan untuk selanjutnya akan berbagi pengalaman atau programnya dari Kementerian Pariwisata tentang Sister Village ya. Waktunya 10 menit ya, supaya bisa kita manfaatkan untuk proses diskusi atau feedback dari peserta yang lain. Silakan dari pariwisata. Kementerian Pariwisata. Oh ya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to you all. Before I start my presentation, I would like to deliver my utmost appreciation to the ILO Country Office for Indonesia and Timor-Leste and the rest of the team, of course, for your excellent arrangement for today's event. Actually, I have prepared the presentation in English, but maybe it's better to speak in Bahasa so that everyone can understand and the interpreter can bekerja bergantian ya, istirahat yang salah satu. Baik, mungkin bisa dibantu paparannya. Baik, terima kasih. Kami dari Kementerian Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif tentu saja sangat mendukung program Blue Economy Agenda ini, khususnya di sektor pariwisata. Khususnya lebih khusus lagi pengembangan di bidang pariwisata bahari. Namun dalam kesempatan ini, sebelumnya perkenalkan saya Herlina dari Direktorat Hubungan Antar Lembaga akan membawakan beberapa share saja apa yang bisa dilakukan, what's next dari program pengembangan sumber daya dan juga apa yang sudah dilakukan ILO di Manado ini. Baik, yang pertama kami akan share next slide. Ya, jadi yang pertama saya akan share terkait dengan UNWTO Best Tourism Village Initiative, dan yang kedua kami akan share juga tentang inisiasi kami di Sister Village, pengembangan Sister Village di BIM-EAGA subregional ASEAN ya. Baik, next slide. Yang pertama, next saja. Baik, saya ingin share tentang program UNWTO ini, UNWTO Best Tourism Village. Di sini program ini berjalan sejak 2021 dan mungkin salah satu dari trainer di sini merupakan perwakilan dari Desa Melanggeran ya, salah satu yang sudah diakui sebagai UNWTO Best Tourism Village. UNWTO Best Tourism Village ini merupakan salah satu desa, pengembangan desa yang memiliki potensi budaya dan potensi alam yang luar biasa, yang mempertahankan dan juga mengkonservasi dan mempromosikan nilai-nilai produk dan juga gaya hidup yang berbasis masyarakat, serta memiliki komitmen yang jelas untuk pengembangan sustainability, baik di aspek ekonomi, sosial maupun lingkungan. Kemudian juga tujuannya adalah menjadikan pariwisata sebagai salah satu pendorong untuk transformasi yang positif dan juga pengembangan desa serta kesejahteraan masyarakat. Di tahun 2023 ini, negara-negara anggota UNWTO dapat mengusulkan 8 desa wisata untuk diajukan sebagai UNWTO Best Tourism Village. Namun ada beberapa persyaratan dan salah satunya yaitu populasi dari kawasan tidak boleh lebih dari 15.000 penduduk, kemudian terletak di kawasan yang memiliki kegiatan tradisional yang penting seperti pertanian, kemudian kehutanan, peternakan ataupun fishery. Kemudian juga berbagi tentang nilai dan gaya hidup masyarakat. Kemudian apa saja sih yang dievaluasi atau dinilai dalam pengusulan UNWTO Best Tourism Village ini? Yang pertama adalah desa ini harus memiliki sumber daya alam dan budaya yang baik tangible maupun intangible yang diakui di level nasional, regional maupun internasional. Kemudian juga desa berkomitmen untuk mempromosikan dan melestarikan budaya. Kemudian juga berkomitmen untuk mempromosikan keberlanjutan ekonomi dengan mendorong pengembangan bisnis, entrepreneurship, dan juga investment. Kemudian desa juga berkomitmen untuk mempromosikan social inclusion dan juga equality untuk masyarakatnya dan juga pengunjungnya. Kemudian berkomitmen untuk keberlanjutan lingkungan, baik dari sisi kebijakan, kemudian inisiatif yang dilaksanakan maupun konservasi dari sumber daya. Kemudian juga berkomitmen untuk menjadikan pariwisata sebagai pilar strategis dalam pengembangan dan juga tata kelola destinasinya. Kemudian memiliki infrastruktur untuk memfasilitasi akses dan komunikasi untuk kesejahteraan masyarakat, dan juga memiliki akses yang dekat dengan akses kesehatan, keselamatan maupun keamanan bagi masyarakat dan juga wisatawan. Jadi dari Kementerian Pariwisata memfasilitasi untuk kurasi desa-desa wisata yang telah memenuhi 9 area penilaian ini, dan saat ini sudah ada 70 desa wisata di hampir 40 negara yang telah diakui sebagai UNWTO Best Tourism Village, dan kami harap akan ada lebih banyak lagi ngelanggaran-ngelanggaran yang dapat diakui di level global. Baik, next slide. Kemudian kami akan bicara tentang inisiasi. Jadi ini masih konsep awal yang akan kita bawa di KTT ASEAN. Yang pertama, menjadikan sister village atau program sister village di bidang pariwisata di BIM EAGA. Kemudian sebelumnya saya ingin menjelaskan sedikit, next slide, tentang BIM EAGA dan peran Indonesia dalam kerjasama ini. Next slide please. Jadi yang pertama, BIM EAGA ini yaitu Indonesia Filipina East Asia Growth Area yang kita singkat BIM EAGA, merupakan kerjasama subregional di kawasan ASEAN yang terbentuk di tahun 1994. Kerjasama ini bertujuan untuk mengakselerasi pembangunan di daerah terpencil dan less developed di masing-masing negara anggota. Di Indonesia sendiri, kawasan yang masuk pengembangan BIM EAGA ini antara lain Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Maluku, dan Papua. Ada 7 pilar pengembangan BIM EAGA, antara lain konektivitas, kemudian food basket ini terkait agriculture, pariwisata, lingkungan, sosial budaya. Kemudian dalam rangka memastikan seluruh program dan kegiatan ini dapat berjalan dengan lancar, BIM EAGA juga membentuk klaster dan juga working group di dalamnya. Dan Indonesia saat ini menjadi focal point untuk BIM EAGA Joint Tourism Development Group. Next slide please. Baik. Saat ini dapat kami sampaikan bahwa Indonesia atau melalui Kementerian Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif menjadi ketua dari BIM EAGA Joint Tourism Development Cluster untuk periode 2022-2024, dan sebagai ketua prioritas utama kami adalah untuk memastikan akselerasi pemulihan bidang pariwisata supaya berjalan dengan baik dan mengharmonisasikan kepentingan Indonesia khususnya dengan agenda yang ada di subregional. Pada pilar pariwisata ini ada 4 strategi prioritas yang dapat berperan menjadi guidance bagi negara-negara anggota. Yang pertama adalah akses pariwisata dan juga pengembangan infrastruktur, kemudian pengembangan produk ekowisata, pengembangan SDM di bidang pariwisata, dan juga promosi pendekatan untuk manajemen alam, budaya, dan warisan heritage lainnya. Next slide. Jika kembali ke 4 prioritas strategis tadi, salah satu fokus utamanya adalah pengembangan ekowisata, dan karena itu di Kemenparekraf kami melihat potensi untuk menjadi inisiatif dalam pengembangan desa wisata. Salah satunya adalah pembentukan sister village ini di wilayah BIM EAGA. Salah satu alasannya adalah kedekatan geografis serta kemiripan dalam hal budaya di antara keempat negara ini dan kebiasaan yang mirip-mirip ya.